Hi, everybody. Okay, well, here we are. We crossed over yet again from Instagram to Facebook, which I always feel like for some reason is like some miracle of nature. And yet here we are, our regular Thursday night gig. And it is, another week has gone by. And so here we are with, I'm with Dr. Elizabeth Murray as per routine. And back again by popular demand is Rob Swanda, who we adore. And Rob and hi Pamela and Rob's cat Sai, who has taken off. So first we got to talk about the cat because the cat was so popular. Oh, look at Sai. So sweet. And please show what I think we have a little bit of hi Nicole, a demo from Sai. Has a Valentine toy.
She had it, but now
highly.
She's already
where'd it go?
it.
I saw it.
She's already taken the toy is gone by the way.
The toy is gone. Oh, there it is.
Okay, we'll find the toy, and right there's. I told you, Sai the cat was going to be. See,
now my grandfather's name was Sai, so
there you go. Right?
Maybe it's my grandfather in cat form.
Now we're like breaking into sci-fi.
Probably not. Right. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. And I'm here with Dr. Elizabeth Murray in her cool sweater. I told you I tried to wear a cool sweater, but look at her. Okay. I'm like second place with the third place with the probably fourth place behind the cat. Oh gosh. Okay. All right. Oh gosh. Nicole is I'm hearing you on the school stuff, and we are going to get there. So let's talk, friends. What we thought we would talk about, we're going to use our time together to go through some science about how do we determine what these variants are and determine the mutations. And remember, we really like to get into. We don't like to talk around science. We like to talk about science. So Rob is going to take us through that. Then we will talk a little bit about the school stuff. I think we need to talk about the origin of the virus because there was some chatter about that this week. And then I think we should talk about some of the quarantine stuff that came out of the CDC today if you've been vaccinated. So, all right, with that in mind, I got no intro. Rob, how on earth do we figure out? How do they figure out when we be a variant?
Okay, so I'm gonna walk through the sequencing first, and actually this will be a sneak peek because I'm gonna make a video on sequencing too because there have been a lot of questions on that and how that operates.
I already feel like I just have to do this. Like this is gonna be. I feel like I have to. Oh my God, is this gonna be
sometime?
Okay.
Okay. So the nitty gritty science part is that, back in February of 2020, they were able to sequence the genome of SARS-CoV-2. So that is now considered the master reference genome of the genetic material of the virus. So that's kind of your standard, and everything that's different is different from that original one. And when they do the sequencing, basically what they have is they have something called a primer, which is a little piece of the genetic material of the virus that's in the beginning, and it essentially will be complementary or reverse to what the virus is. So you can think of it kind of like a magnet. And then it's going to start scanning along, and it will amplify that viral RNA, actually, because the SARS-CoV-2 carries its genetic information on RNA. And then they can run it on a computer system and really just compare it to what they originally had and look for any differences. So in one of my videos, I kind of explain mutations. They're looking for misspellings. Sometimes the misspellings don't really mean too much. For us, if we use the wrong there or there, yes, it does have some change. But if there can be certain mutations that don't actually change the amino acid structure, so then it doesn't really matter. But then really big changes can happen if a word, is actually dramatically different, and then it could change what the whole sentence means. So that could really change the structure of the protein, and that's what they're most worried about. So one way I like to kind of think of this sequencing is like the primer could be like the cover of a book. So you kind of know what it looks like and you know what to look for in the store. So that's the beginning. And then the pages are what you're going to start reading through. So they're reading through this sequence that they just found on somebody who was positive. It comes out and there's no difference. It was proofread and it was perfect. So you had the original SARS-CoV-2 virus, but they found a mistake on somebody else on page 500. And then that mistake might be the UK variant, or the mistake found on page 700, which might be the South African variant. And I mean, there's different names for all of them, but I know that that's like what the media is sometimes
That's too long of a book.
Much.
700 pages is too much to read.
It is.
Too
we
long
don't have
of a
time
book.
for that. True.
I don't want to read that book. I don't want to read that book. Yeah, but that's a great analogy, though. It's a great analogy.
Great analogy. Yeah. Rob, so good, Rob. That's strong word. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it really is a matter of going back to the computer and sort of running the sequence of the sample against the reference sample, which is what's known.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's like,
lab,
you know, if you and yeah, exactly. It's kind of like if you're thinking of like you're going to trace something on a piece of paper, you know, maybe you're holding it up to the light or holding it up to like the X-ray machine, and you're going to see like where it's different. So maybe there's like a loop here, but then instead now it's like a straight line. So like another way to think about it. And then they say, oh, that area is different than what it was supposed to be. So it's really just a comparison system, and then they really need that reference so that February 2020 sequence is really important for them to keep comparing everything back to.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, interesting. Okay, thank you for that. That is very helpful. I mean, people,
all clear
we
now.
all should know. Yeah, we're almost there, right? We all should know.
Well, how many times did you see people say that COVID-19 was? Yeah, but how many times did you see people say COVID-19 was the 19th version or something along those lines? And that wasn't the case either. I mean, that was the year that we found that one. There are other coronaviruses. We talked a lot about that, but it wasn't the 19th. And
totally. And one of the reasons why I made like the first mutation video is because one of the comments on my original video had said the 501Y mutation. Someone was like, oh, it's mutated 500 times. I'm like, no, that's not the case. Which I can understand people get confused, but it's like,
absolutely,
we need to clear that up. Yeah, we need to like make it more clear.
Right. Yeah, I think it is important that we talk about that, and kind of the position of the that has to do with it, right? The position. Yeah.
Right. So the number that's associated with the mutation, that's the exact place on the instructions to make the spike protein. So to make the spike protein, that's really the only one they're interested in. So there's other mutations occurring on other proteins because we know that the virus is made of 29, but that spike is, of course, what everyone's talking about because they're interested in this immune effects and how it's going to respond to the vaccines. So the number on the mutation is the actual place on the instructions to make that spike protein that has been changed. And then the first letter is whatever amino acid it was supposed to be. And then the second letter is now the new amino acid that it has mutated to.
Oh, okay. Now we're really now we really right? Or we got the inside scoop.
Yeah, and so that's critical. It's not like you said, it's not sequential numbers, it's not alphabetical. We're not going to see all the letters because they don't all exist in amino acids. So
Yes, good. Exactly. Good point.
That's super helpful.
Yeah, very, very, very helpful. All right. Dr. B is asking, controversial, is the second Moderna or Pfizer dose necessary?
Yes. I think I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes because it's how it was studied. It's how it was studied. And if we're in such a bad spot that we're skimping, then we got to have a bigger backup plan. I think. Studied that way. Yeah.
Right. I mean, would it be the end of the world if people just got one dose, right? After your first dose, most people are it effective 50% of the time, which is, I know people say, well, look at the flu shot. Sometimes it's less than that, but I still think that, keep saying my new catchphrase is, if we are interested in putting an end to the pandemic, we're going to have to do better than that. So that's kind of my hot take on that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. That's just my thought on that one. All right. So look, let's jump a little bit into the origins. I know that this week, and I'm not really sure why this was sort of presented by like big outlets like CNN, like breaking news. The virus actually wasn't manufactured in the lab. We were all kind of like, hey, what's new out of these guys? Fire is hot. So that was sort of
what did it involved bats, and it involved a market maybe, and buying. It's kind of an Indiana Jones-ish story, kind of. Not.
Yeah. I mean, say more about that. Tell me what you mean more.
All right. So what it happened? I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of controversy with people saying that this was a created virus. Bill Gates created it. Dr. Fauci created it. The Chinese created it. Whatever. And so, yes, it was created, but it was created in nature through evolutionary processes, just like everything else. And so scientists went back to try to isolate the original one a little bit more to see what they could find. And what they found is kind of what we knew all along. Yes, there's some questions about some of the authenticity. There are people who are kind of, aren't sure that they can totally trust all the information coming out of China because it's kind of regulated by their government. But on the other hand, there's nothing to really go against what they've been saying, because it's pretty consistent with what our understanding has been all along, is that this, is a virus that originally mutated from another virus and came out from animals to then humans, as they do, and then spread. And that there now appears to be more and more evidence of that it could have potentially popped up in a couple places at once in different parts of the world. And so what we were initially bothered by here in the United States might not necessarily even be the original Wuhan Chinese strain. There was some evidence that there was other parts of the world had these early versions as well. So
yeah,
we are a global viral community, right? It is,
well said, and that's
we can't. I think just trying to worry about one country or the other, we can't do that anymore, because we travel from all of these countries in a couple of hours. And so, if we're not, we can worry about vaccinating us, but we got to worry about vaccinating the world. We can worry about where a germ comes from, but it can come from anywhere, and it can spread anywhere in hours.
Yeah. No, totally agree. And this is a kind of an interesting one. Before we get there, I just have to say that, because I think Stephanie's comment, she heard if it was manufactured, you could tell by some of the proteins. Rob, I'm going to be interested in your take on that. Is sort of lab manufactured? But what is very joyful for me is when we're sitting here talking about some of these, their conspiracy theories or whatever. For Rob, who's a scientist, who's so in the weeds on this, like, it's some of these stuff is so, and I'm not trying to diminish anybody who is concerned about some of these theories, but they're so scientifically implausible to Rob Swanda. He can't even keep a straight face listening to it. Like, you're like dying. And so, which gives me a lot of faith in science. But thoughts about that, because I think that is Stephanie brings up a really good point. Can you tell the difference when you if you were able to engineer that back transfer through mRNA purposes?
Absolutely. So I would say you wouldn't determine it by the proteins, but there's other ways you could determine it, which is like the genetic structure, the genetic sequence, because when you make changes to any, whether that's human cells or mouse cells or viruses, bacteria, you have to, change the genetic sequence in a certain way by using certain cut sites. You have to do selection markers. So this is like making something maybe ampicillin resistant or kanamycin resistant. These are just antibiotics. Because not whenever you do that process, it's not going to work 100%. Just, like other things that we do is not always 100%, but maybe it's 50%. So you need to figure out, okay, which ones did it work in and which ones did it not. So typically we use, some type of selection marker for that, and that has to be encoded in the genetic sequence, and that's not found here. So just adding, further proof that this is not plausible, that it came from a manufactured source.
Yeah. So you weren't lying awake at night worrying about this.
No.
This one. I think. Okay, understood. Okay. Noted. The record shall reflect that.
Yes.
Okay, that's fair enough. So that's helpful to know. All right, great. So we got we dug into science a little bit. I'm proud of us, friends, on Science Day that we dug into science a little bit. So I just want to shift over to the school conversation a little bit, because that is ongoing. Any minute we are going to be seeing some updated guidance from the CDC that's coming out, and I saw sort of a little hint that they're sort of banking on 5 pillars. I'm going to see if I can remember them all. None of them should be surprising to anybody in this who's participating here. And that masking, hand washing, distancing, contact tracing, and cleaning, sanitation, ventilation. Testing was in the contact tracing category. So that's what's coming down the pike, and it's going to be interesting. I don't know. I'll be curious to see exactly what gets updated, because these 5 things have been sort of part and parcel of our strategy. But what is notable is that I think the language, the devil will be in the details, because the language is going to indicate that getting teachers vaccinated is a layer on top of that, and can happen kind of concomitantly or simultaneously with the return to school. And I think that is a little bit of sticking point as well. Pamela's bringing up the testing as the sticking point.
I think the ventilation in the buildings, I think that's going to be a huge problem. I think that's going to be the breaker for a lot of places, because we have so many old, almost dilapidated buildings, and unfortunately so many kids are going to school in. And if you in the Northeast, you're not opening those windows anytime soon. So I think that's going to be a big problem.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a really, really tricky thing. I will say, and Michelle, I think, is bringing up a good point in the comments that I will just show here. Is that private schools have been doing it for months, and it is very true. I feel fairly confident that certainly K through 8 can open and can do it safely with these mitigating strategies. That can happen successfully even without all of the teachers being fully vaccinated. Look, don't get me wrong. Do I think that teachers need to be prioritized and we need to get them vaccinated now and right away? And I think in the majority of places that is happening. So that makes me happy to see. And that I'm hoping by the time that the graduated plan is done and the kids are back in school, that's, most places is like March or mid-April or something like that. The majority of teachers will have gotten both vaccinations. So I feel like it is like it can work. I do think, and I think I'm going to show this comment too from Nicole. Nicole, thank you for the COVID angels as well.
Yes, that was so kind.
Yeah, love.
Mine's in my bag. I can't get it to show everybody, but she sent us these wonderful we both posted about it, so you can see it on our Instagram accounts. These wonderful COVID angels with this nice little prayer and to keep us safe. So that was very kind.
Yeah, pretty great. But a great point about the distancing sort of within the classroom. 30 kids. That is that can make it tough for the distancing and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the difference between private and the public schools is for the most part size. And that private schools, I've come to learn as a parent of 2 children now in private schools, is that they have a lot more flex from year to year, where their class sizes might change. And so they have teachers that are used to flexing from 1st grade to 3rd grade or different things along those lines, where we just don't necessarily see that as much in the bigger public schools. And so I think that's why a lot of the private schools have been able to stay open.
Yeah. It is the other thing that has been interesting. Oh, hi, Marion. Yay, Dr. Sills in the house. She's put in a link for us to check out, which we will. I agree. The testing The testing is an interesting point. My kids have been back in school and have also been they do not have a testing requirement, the sort of periodic testing screening requirement. I think that's a really tricky one. So
it's backed off of that quite a bit in New York here now, with the rates kind of coming down. The governor's loosened up a lot of the testing, the random testing that was going on. So that's not happening in a lot of places right now. And still, kind of, some places have a lot of schools open and some places hardly have any schools open. So it's quite a bit of variability. We are kind of, the City of Rochester School District is now kind of partially getting there. We discovered they had to lay off all the cafeteria workers at the beginning of the pandemic, and they were not able to bring them all back. So that's the current issue, is trying to get the kids' lunches in schools in person. So it's again, there's so many layers to this. And then, poverty adds just another layer on top of this. The discrepancies are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and the divergence is definitely happening.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. And I'm going to ask just Dr. Sills, maybe because she's noting the 32 cases. I'd be curious to see how those were stratified. Were they mostly high school, mostly older kids? I think that's the other sort of interesting element. So that's a very interesting topic. The other thing that I think I'm going to put this right here in the comments as well. And the special needs students, I think that's been a challenge that's been talked about, right? Kids who can't, are not able to successfully mask or successfully distance, and what's our best approach there? Thoughts about that? I think it is, gosh, that is so multi-layered and such a tricky one. Keeping them out of school can also be a tremendous burden on a working family.
Right.
That's
and plus has a population that cannot really do the remote learning nearly as well either. And they have so many services that they need. So I know I've been working on trying to get that population back to their services, at least early on. But these are situations where we're seeing a lot more of like face shields and other kind of stuff, much smaller volume of students in the classroom, teachers wearing face shields, other types of stuff, increasing ventilation. And making sure that there's no mixing, that you're in a cohort and then you stay in that cohort as well.
Yeah, right. No, that makes sense. And I also think that this is where, if there is any way, as school administrators are starting to prioritize teachers to get vaccinated, I think that it certainly stands to reason, in my opinion, that those teachers who may be in higher risk situations based on what they do, are they higher or ahead in the line to get vaccinated, to make sure that they're protected. I think that there are some subtle ways that can be managed. So that's that seems pretty split, Dr. Sills, just in terms of
it really does.
The distribution, which sort of which is interesting. I mean, low numbers, which is fantastic. And notably, Marion said none of the cases involved a child infecting an adult, which is very, very interesting to me as well. So kind of more support for that. Do I get it? I absolutely can appreciate the perspective of teachers who are concerned. But I do believe that we can, but I believe that we can get there for sure. And it's a challenge, though. I get it, and it's a mess. I mean, just to sort of shift a little bit to vaccine access, just because I think this is somewhat related. How's it going up your way, Dr. Murray? Is it easy to?
Oh, God, no. I mean, well, they announced today that they're getting rid of that executive program that the University of Rochester was offering, where they had the big scandal where some people were vaccinated because they were big donors, potentially. So that program's been eliminated. But no, we're still, I mean, the last week, I think the county got 1,500 vaccines. I mean, that's just, it's not zero, but it's kind of essentially zero. And then there was a huge computer glitch today where like a wrong link was distributed. And so a huge number of teachers were registered for vaccines. Actually, I think it was for yesterday. And they got there and all their appointments had been canceled because it was duplicates. And so, the fact that technology is slowing this down is boggling my mind that, I can't even put words to it anymore, that, we can't just register people. It just seems So silly. Neither of my parents have received their first vaccine yet, and they keep going and looking, and they're both have physicians that are very capable physicians that are hooked into major healthcare systems. And so, the healthcare systems are supposed to be getting allocations of vaccines as well. The data as far as what vaccines we have are going in arms for sure. That's definitely happening, but we just don't have the vaccines.
Yeah, there are a bunch of issues, I think, that are, number one, it's sort of distribution of supplies, right? So that's one piece of it. I think the next piece of it is coordination and sort of strategy and coordination. Right. Then there's the tech piece. I mean, there's just so many elements that are going into it.
And now they've loosened it up some more too. So, now we're down to 65, and then we're also medical comorbidities. And so it was kind of a big flurry of, well, what does that mean? What do you have to do? And so now they're, went from a doctor just has to send a note with you to now you just have to sign a waiver saying I qualify. And so it's just making more panic because now you have a bigger pool of people that really, really want vaccines. And so it's glitching up the system even more. So, I heard today, I think they said they've just secured another 600,000 vaccines or another big number, which is great. Unfortunately, it probably means there's another country that's not getting them. But we just got to start making, fingers crossed, J&J vaccine in a couple weeks. Was it the 22nd that's getting reviewed? So we can hope we get a third coming soon.
Right. More to come on that for sure. I think this is an interesting question. Should we be vaccinating teachers or first make sure we vaccinate based on preventing hospitalizations and death? That's an interesting one. Any thoughts on that, esteemed members of the panel?
I don't know that those are mutually exclusive. I mean, I think vaccinating teachers, if we're saying they're potentially in a little bit of a higher risk pool because of potentially maybe exposures, I'm not sure that the data necessarily shows that 100%, other than you are potentially in a workspace with other adults not wearing masks, like they're in lunch break times or things along those lines. The importance of making sure our teachers are healthy so we can have teachers to teach school is certainly very, very great. I don't know. I think there's probably a lot of teachers who have asthma or other medical problems that would certainly put them at risk as well. So I'm not sure that those two groups are mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, and I don't know what to say about that. Other than I think that, I certainly agree with you that now that most states I think are at least down to 65, right? I mean, I think that is. So I think that the elderly. I mean, if you look at it really at sort of age data and risk data according to age. I think that so many of the 65 and let's even say 75 and older, because that is a previous cohort. I think they have had a fairly good luck with getting that. Not perfect, as you point out. It's a struggle. I mean, I don't think that there's a great answer. And I agree with the comment in the chat that it is not just it's teachers. It's when I talk it's everybody. It's got to be the school psychologists. It's got to be that for sure. That is, and it's great to hear, Dr. Sills, that things are working well in Colorado. I will tell you, in Maryland, not so much. It has been complicated and not ideal for sure. Okay. I want to get to some of these questions because I know will everybody, you guys stay up a little bit later with us tonight. Usually we try to stop at about a half an hour so we don't hijack everybody's night. But are kids less likely to get sick or less likely to get the virus? Who wants to tackle that one?
I can do it. Rob's not a pediatrician. Let's not make him do it.
Yeah, I'm not a pediatrician.
Well, so they're less likely to have serious disease is the issue. Can they still get it? Yes. Have we had many hundreds of thousands of children in the United States get it? We've now had more children die from COVID-19 this year than died of past years from the flu. We have this other issue that's specific to the pediatric population, the multi-system inflammatory, the post-COVID event that can happen, and that has a pretty significant fatality rate associated with it, much worse than just COVID-19. So there are definitely different sets of risk factors to children on the whole children do far, far better than adults. At least they have so far. One of the concerns is we don't know what these new variants will bring as far as what's their special little wrinkle or trick going to be. We have really dodged a huge bullet by not having children be primarily the spreaders as they are for flu or RSV and a lot of the other respiratory viral illnesses. Kids are huge vectors, meaning they are big spreaders of those diseases, and that has not necessarily been the case with COVID-19. But any of these mutations that come along, something could flip a switch and all of a sudden kids could potentially be more successful. So that's why, again, whatever we're doing, whether it's vaccination or distancing or masking, keep the disease burden low. The lower the disease burden, the less likely we are to have more mutations. So is it only healthier conditions or is it genetic differences within the adults? So there's a lot of, it's not just comorbidities as far as the adults. There's thoughts of differences in it's kind of the immune system and some receptors and where the virus kind of lands in the body is kind of some of the working thoughts. I think we don't necessarily know 100% for sure why kids seem to be bothered by it less. I think that we've had other priorities we've really had to focus on, and I think more information on that will be coming soon. But it seems to be something more than just adults are more likely to have other medical problems.
Yeah, I think the other, and to answer this question that is currently up, remember that certainly vaccine, the vaccine is the critical exit ticket, but remember that it's not the only exit ticket. And I think that one of the things that they call it NPI, the non-pharmacologic interventions, and all the masking and distancing, we are able to, in kids in schools. As Dr. Sills pointed out in the article that she cited in the chat there, that we aren't seeing a ton of spikes in schools because we are able to set up an infrastructure where before in schools that are open, kids do mask. The kids are great about masking. They are better than the adults.
Most definitely.
Yeah, and you can control that environment much more for sure. So I think that's a really important one.
And we don't have data on kids and vaccines yet, right? So it's coming. I mean, there's now enrolling kids in studies down to age 12. And so in the next 4-ish months or so, we'll start to have data from that. Studies have been approved. And I think, I believe are going to start, well, they're planning on enrolling sometime soon. Hopefully, theoretically, the next phase would be down to age 5. So 5 to 12-year-olds. And so that would be the next batch. And since we're so far along with the 12 to 15-year-olds, my guess is the 5 to 12 is coming pretty soon. But there'll be many, many months of data collection too. So we've got a long time before we're going to be vaccinating all school-age children. And right now we can be vaccinating down to 16-year-olds. And so now that they've opened it up to people with comorbidities, now this will be the first time where we're really going to see the potential for 16, 17, 18-year-olds. Perhaps with chronic kidney disease or CF or other things like that, where they have the potential now to be vaccinated.
Yeah. So moving on to a couple more questions. The AstraZeneca shot prevents transmission. There is some early reassuring data that does show that. And I actually saw, just to answer Nicole's next question about preventing the vaccination doesn't prevent COVID, though. Prevents serious infection for sure. There's also a preprint that is out of Israel. Yeah. I see you guys kind of in a second. But I saw a preprint of some data out of Israel, actually, that looked at ongoing surveillance testing. Did you see that, Rob? Do you want to comment?
I think so.
Or do you want me to comment?
Yeah. Go ahead, but I think I might have read something similar about the people who've already been vaccinated. Yes, about people who've
been vaccinated. They've been doing some ongoing surveillance data and looking at viral load within the patients, and found that actually the viral load was much lower in patients who were vaccinated. So if you have a lower viral load, then that makes your I'm going to use a metaphor, but your ability to transmit the virus is much lower. So I think that there's really reassuring data in there. Do you want to make it sound more sciencey, Rob, or did I do a good job?
No, I think you did a great job, but also just the fact that they have a lower viral load could also show, that the antibodies that they're producing from these vaccines are working as it's destroying some of the virus that they've been in contact with. So there's less virus circulating. Yeah. So within their own bodies and circulating in the community. So,
yeah, and maybe the next time, actually, Rob, that you are on and join us here, let's talk a little bit about viral load and what that really means, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Because that crosses all diseases, right? That's a lot of diseases.
It's true for everything.
Viral diseases.
Right? And you can get some Lego or book analogy.
Right.
Trail mix. When you reach in for the trail mix, you want that M&M, but you're gonna get like a raisin. But if you put an extra bag of M&Ms in, you're more likely to get an M&M. And so that's why I always doctor my trail mix.
That's right.
There you go.
Oh, all right, friends. Now we know
perfect.
It's now you know. Dr. Murray Jack Pepper trail mix with the real.
Yep. As G.I. Joe says, knowing is half the battle. So there we go.
Yeah. That is good.
All right. Cheaters never prosper. That's what also G.I. Joe says. So I got it all. I got all the facts.
Yeah, she's sharp tonight. All right. Yes, Lindsay, that is true. Dr. Fauci said that. I feel like that is a really aspirational, a fabulously aggressive goal. I don't know what to make of it when I am hearing, similar within weeks that the CEO of Moderna saying, look to 2022 before we're actually going to see kids get vaccinated. So
I wonder if he was saying that we'll have vaccines approved by then, because I could see us being close to getting approval for vaccines down to all school-age children, but not in kids' arms.
Yeah, I think we're going to see some data. I think we'll probably have some safety data.
We'll definitely have data down to 12-year-olds. Definitely.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For that. For sure. For that age group, for sure. But I think that Lindsay says it's a stretch, and I think you're right about that. I think that is that is very true. So last data-driven topic of the night here before we sign off, I think we should just talk a little bit about double masking, because that business, that conversation came out as well. So, okay, who wants to go first? Not it.
Well, I can say a quick analogy that me and one of my former colleagues, who's an immunologist, her and I were talking on the phone once about masking, just to put it into perspective for individuals to know the size of the virus. So the virus is quite small. Like, you can think of the virus as like one single sugar grain. But the respiratory droplets that come out when you're talking or when you sneeze are actually 50 times the size. And so they can be like a sugar cube. So when you think of the mask, what we're really trying to block is those sugar cubes or the respiratory droplets, because that's where most of the virus is going to harbor. It's not really just floating around in the air. I'm not saying that that's impossible, but that's really not the type that we're trying to filter out. It's more so these respiratory droplets that when people are talking, when they're stuck inside, they're kind of in the air, they're circulating, and then they can get into your airways and infect you. So that's just putting the size into perspective, so people know that the masks that you're wearing are really trying to filter out those respiratory droplets, but the N95 ones can actually filter down as low as the size of the virus itself.
Yeah, I think that's right. And so the guidance that came out really is that it looks like double masking, or sort of that adding that extra layer does indeed help. And so sure.
That's the
reason. Yeah.
More layers is going to block more stuff.
Exactly.
I mean, you're going to hit diminishing returns because it's going to get ridiculous, but
it will help, right?
If fewer and fewer people are wearing masks, let's make sure the ones who are doing it super correct and getting the best bang for their buck, I think. I mean, it would be better if everybody would just do it appropriately.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's especially we're seeing
one mask worn well is better than more masks.
That's true.
Yes, exactly.
And we might be seeing some of this too now versus, previous months, because things are much colder in some, certain areas. So people are inside more. So the double mask is going to be more helpful in those areas, because you are just constantly breathing in the same air that might not be filtered, especially if the buildings are super old, like we were just talking about for the schools. Right. They don't have ventilation. So it's really just a protection of yourself. And that's all that I think sometimes people get anxious about like having to put on another one, but really it's for your own protection. So, I mean, and protection of others too. If you, in case you have it, but it's mainly for you.
Right.
I've really, with the cold weather, started to really appreciate the fabric masks. I've always been doing the surgical masks because that's what I have. But I got to tell you, like with this, like the blowing snow and stuff going into the grocery store, I like that fabric mask. That's nice and cozy.
It is. It's warm.
It's not so bad. I don't mind it.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. It is. I mean, it's going to be an interesting thing as we learn more. I think that there are, the point here from Dr. B that the harm in double masking is more resistance to airflow through the mask can cause leak of air. I think the point there really as well is the emphasis on fit. That you can wear 25 masks, and if there's a big gaping hole out, that's not gonna do you any good.
Right.
And so we lost Dr. Murray. She'll be back.
Oh no.
She'll be back. But I think that is one of the other points that is really notable, that you've got to wear a mask that fits well. So I think that's and I think, Nicole, your point is really well taken. It is confusing, right? This has been tough. I mean, I realized for my organization, I chair the COVID response team committee, and boy, that is a treat. And so we had our very first meeting February 28th, 2020, almost a year ago. I mean, can you believe it that we've been doing this? And, we realized how much we've learned, how much we still have to learn. I think that it is really powerful why it seems, I get it, why people can be confused, because the protocols change, the knowledge changes. I don't know ever before, have we ever had a front row seat to science evolve like this? I don't think so.
I don't think so, no. Yeah. And I think that's an important thing for people to recognize too, is that in all disciplines, but especially in science, we're constantly building off of previous things and we're changing them. We're finding ways that things have improved. And, that's all we are trying to do, is how can we do something better? But it's, it's the same thing for other fields too. Infrastructure is always trying to change. Policies are always trying to change. So I think people just need to be a bit more open that, we don't always get it right the first time. But that doesn't mean that we're not actively trying to figure out what the right solution is.
Yeah. Science. Now I feel like I'm bringing it home in the final innings here by bringing it back to the International Day of Women in Science and STEM, is bringing it home that Dr. Murray is I'm getting a text message from Dr. Murray that she's trying to. No, we can't see you, Dr. Murray. You're try to log on again. That the other piece is that science is constantly disproving. Here she comes. We're learning. Let's see if we can't get her back. There she is.
What happened? I didn't lose internet. I didn't do anything.
I don't know. You just vanished, and I was in the middle of a big hot about the fact that science changes. We are regularly disproving and improving, and sometimes those mean the same thing. Our theories and our previous hypotheses, and I think that is important. Dr. Rama making the point that that's when things go bad, when you stop wanting to change, and I think that is also really beautifully said. And so it is tough and it is confusing. And I think that has to be acknowledged, and people's struggle with that has to be acknowledged, because it is tough. And, I do think that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I think it's hopeful, a hopeful time. And you guys can ask me that again on Saturday when I'm 12 hours out from my vaccine, second dose of my vaccine, and I am still in bed at noon. But I do feel like there is hope on the horizon. What we are going to try to do, and now there's been 45 minutes, we will sign off for the night. But what I feel like I can promise from the three of us is that we will continue to try to break it down, all of the new and emerging science, the best that we can, to make sure that you guys and Cy the cat our update on the latest evidence-based stuff. So we will do our very best to do that. So thank you guys for hanging in with us, and thanks to Rob. Isn't it great when Rob comes on?
Thank you for coming back.
Yeah, thank you both for having me.
We'll do it again. So I think the next one is viral load, right? That's going to be our next topic. So so we'll hit that the next time. Everybody have a fantastic weekend. Stay in touch, everybody, and
happy Valentine's.
And be our Valentine.
That's right.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a very good night.
Good night.
Night to all.